Hello, this is Karen Harrison, and welcome to July Reiki Call. My website is karenharrison.net. Tonight, we're going to be talking about Reiki and human design with my friend and colleague, Tracy Sullivan, whom I'll introduce in a minute. And I just want to start with a little opening prayer. So if you have Reiki, I invite you to activate your Reiki and place your hands in Gasho. Gasho is simply two hands coming together, thumb pointed into the heart chakra. And if you don't have Reiki, just call on healing power and love. So take a deep breath and bring your attention to the space between your palms and breathe deeply. Intend that Reiki energy flow in through your crown and flow all the way down through your body, filling you with the Reiki energy. And imagine that this is a current of energy, much like a river of Reiki. That river of Reiki is continuing to flow through you. And it's clearing anything that you need to release. It's helping you to feel calm, centered, and grounded. And we call on the divine to be here with us by whatever name you call it. We particularly call on the angels. And we just affirm that only those with the best intentions are joining our call tonight, and those that aren't are guided to do something else. We see everyone surrounded with love. We're grateful for this community of Reiki practitioners coming together to learn more about Reiki and things that go with Reiki, to connect with each other, to find more ways to support ourselves and grow on our spiritual journeys. And take another deep breath. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. And come back into the room. So the person with the name Zoom user, could I put your name by instead of Zoom user? Okay. If I'm not able to put your name down, yeah. Okay. All right. There. Okay, so I want to introduce my friend and colleague, Tracy Sullivan. I had the great pleasure of being able to mentor Tracy a few years ago through the licensed teacher training program. Tracy is an ICRT licensed Reiki master teacher, and she's been teaching Reiki since 2011. She teaches all the levels of Reiki that the ICRT has. Misui Holy Fire 3 Reiki Master, Karuna Reiki, the ICRT animal classes. She's also certified in holographic sound healing and Jikiden Reiki, another kind of Reiki sound therapy, and she's a medical Reiki master. So she's been studying the human design system since 2018, and she's at a professional level of training and a certified teacher with Human Design America. Her website is reikiintegration.com, and she's teaching a 4-hour class called Energy Integration that goes into more depth about human design and Reiki. And she'll send the link for the next class as soon as she has it. And she says that anybody that watches the podcast can join it for free. So I appreciate that. So if you have that, Tracy, by the end of, or, when I send out the follow-up email, then I will send that link out with everyone. Or if you have the link now, you could put it into chat.
Ooh. Well, I'll send it to you after the podcast.
Okay. All right. Super. So, well, Tracy, I am really intrigued by human design. I know very little about it, and I am been wanting to learn about it for a long time. So, can you explain a little bit about what is human design?
Yes, I'd be happy to. So one little correction I want to make is I'm not yet a certified teacher for human design. I am in a professional level course to become one. So I just wanted to be transparent about that. I must have written it wrong. So, yes, I would be happy to talk a little bit about what human design is. And through this hour that we're talking about human design, if you find that some things you're not really understanding, that's okay. There is so much information that goes along with human design. And you could study this for your whole life and still not know everything there is to know about it. The important thing about human design and the powerful thing about human design is to actually incorporate it into your life. Very similar to Reiki. You could take you could take a Reiki class every weekend. And if you're not practicing Reiki, then it's not really going to do that much for you. So and that is why I invite people to take the class that I offer to learn more about their own design so you can start living your design. So human design is really about decision making. How we make decisions, it can show us, human design can show us how to consistently make the correct choices in your life. And we all know that that is something that many people struggle with. Like, how do you know you're making the correct decision? It's not always easy to know. So it's a way of allowing your body's intelligence, also known as your inner authority. So in human design, it's always the inner authority that is our own decision making, what we rely on for our own decision making. It's not the mind, that's our outer authority. So our own body's intelligence is our inner authority, and we each have our own individual inner authority, which I'll talk a little bit about. But I'm going to show you at the end. I'll give you some links to where you can find out what your type and your strategy and your authority, everything I talk about. You can get a lot of information for free on the internet. So don't worry if what I'm saying at first doesn't make like you don't understand it. So making decisions based on what is fixed and reliable in you, as opposed to making decisions from your mind. So like I said, your mind is your outer authority. The mind is always influenced by outside conditioning and doesn't really reflect our uniqueness. Human design can show you how to live as yourself. And Holy Fire, Reiki, we call that our authentic self. So when you're looking at your body graph, and I'm going to show you where you can find your body graph for free and download it. When you're looking at that, you are looking at a blueprint of your authentic self. The essence of human design and the result of the application as you apply it in your life is very spiritual and very deep. And at the same time, it is something that we can put to practical use in our everyday life. So similar to how Yusui Sensei received the gift of Reiki, human design was received in a mystical way by a man, a Canadian named Robert Krakauer. He was living on an island off the coast of Spain called Ibiza. He moved there in 1983 in an effort to live a life more removed from the fast-paced life that he had been living up until then. So nobody really heard from him again until January of 1987, when he had a shocking encounter, as he calls it, with what he calls the voice that penetrated him for 8 days and 8 nights. So this voice told him how the universe functions, and he was given the human design system. So this was not something that he created himself. It wasn't something that he was looking for. It was something that was given to him. What he was given is a system that is a synthesis. And now remember what a synthesis is. It's a combination of different components, and it creates something new. So it is not just putting things together, it's actually bringing them together, and there's a mutation that occurs and something new is created. So that's what human design is. So in human design, the components are astrology. And I'm actually going to share my screen right now so it'll make a little bit more sense to you what I'm talking about. I want you to be able to see what I'm talking about. So let's go back to this first page. So this is the human design mandala. The center part of it is the body graph. So these are the components of human design. Astrology, that's the inner ring, and I have it annotated here, the astrological wheel. So it aligns the planetary positions with the hexagrams of the I Ching. So here is the astrological wheel with the astrological signs. The Chinese I Ching is the outer ring of the mandala. So this outer ring is the Chinese I Ching. And if you don't know what the Chinese I Ching is, it is one of the first books that was ever written. And it's kind of like a book that's written about all the seasons of life. So what every situation that a human being could be in. So that's what that part of the mandala represents. So the chakras are the centers that you see in the body graph. So they're triangles and you see some squares, and you might notice that there's 9 there instead of 7. So this is a transition that occurred actually back in 1781 when a man named Herschel discovered the planet Uranus. And when that happened, there was a mutation that occurred. And ever since then, we have been born as 9-centered beings and not 7-centered beings, although most people are still acting like they're 7-centered beings. So that is the component of the chakras and how that came into human design. So the next thing is the tree of life from the Kabbalist tradition. So those are the energy pathways connecting the centers. So you see, these are the energy centers. So the traditionally 7-centered chakras, 7 centers were the chakras, and now we have 9 centers connected by the pathways, which come from the Kabbalist tradition. So in addition to that, there is genetics and quantum mechanics, which I won't get into because that is getting pretty deep into the material. So our energetic blueprint is this human design body graph, which is a portrayal of our genetic code. So remember that when we're talking about human design, we're looking at a blueprint of our genetic code and what energy, what parts of that is active within our body graph. So that's the energy that we can rely on throughout our life. So each human being's genetic code represents your authentic self. The outer wheel is divided into 64 sections that relate to the ancient Chinese wisdom called the I Ching, the Book of Changes. And like I said, the Book of Changes is one of the first books that was ever written. And it's kind of like a dictionary of wisdom on the seasons of life. What makes this so extraordinary is the mathematical structure of its hexagrams. So you see on the outer ring, there's a hexagram, there's hexagrams, 64 hexagrams. The 64 numbered sections you see in the outer ring represent the 64 hexagrams of the I Ching. So if you look at the I Ching, if you bought the I Ching book, you would see that there's 64 hexagrams, and within each, and it talks about the meaning of each of those hexagrams.
So, hey,
So
Tracy, just a second.
yeah,
What is a hexagram?
so a hexagram is kind of like a Chinese ball. It symbolizes the actual meaning of that hexagram, that number in the Chinese I Ching. So they're all different. They all have 6 lines within them. Some of the lines are broken and some of them are straight across. And that is very significant in the I Ching in itself, and when you're reading somebody's chart in human design. So the hexagrams are Chinese characters, kind of like our symbols in Reiki. And it's a reflection of each of the 64 parts of the I Ching. Does that make sense, Karen?
Well, I think it would make more sense if I knew anything about the I Ching. Hopefully somebody else is following this, but I'm a little lost. It's kind of beyond, it's all new knowledge to me. So
Yeah, and you don't really have to worry if you don't understand what it is. It is, you don't need to understand it to be able to put this to practice in your life.
oh,
So
good.
that is the important thing. So for me, I like to have a deep understanding of things before I actually use them, before I implement it in my life. So that's why I'm just covering this. I don't want to just tell you that this is a synthesis of different things. I just want to give you an overview of what those things are. So
Okay.
the really cool thing about this is that these 64 numbered sections in the outer ring that represent those 64 hexagrams in the I Ching are very similar to our genetic code, the codon. So in the 1950s, Watson and Crick, 2 biologists, cracked the genetic code, and it was later observed that the DNA codes and the hexagrams of the I Ching share identical structures. So in the I Ching, these numbers are called hexagrams. The basic binary of the I Ching is the yin and the yang. There's 64 codons in our genetic code, just as there are 64 hexagrams in the I Ching. So I'm going to try to move forward on this. There we go. So here's a little bit of a close-up with a little bit more information about that. So those 64 codons in our genetic code, they are matching, they're identical, the 64 hexagrams in the I Ching and the 64 codons in our genetic code. So the important part that I want you to realize is this is a representation of our genetic code, our each individual genetic code. So that's what this mandala is representing within us. So the 64 hexagrams are used in human design to understand our genetic imprint and how this translates into what you're looking at when you're looking at your body graph. So Mr. Krakauer, the person that this information was given to, emerged from this experience with a new name, Ra Uru Hu. And I say that because all the information that you would find online, you'll find it under his name. So if you're looking for information about human design and the person that discovered it, or who the information came through, it's Ra Uru Hu. So, and actually, like Usui, Ra understood that this system that is meant to be shared, and he spent the rest of his life just experimenting with this. So for the first few years after he received this information, he did not share it with a large group of people because he wasn't sure, if he went crazy or what. He really didn't trust the information. So he experimented with the information he received with himself, and then his group got larger and larger and larger of people that he was sharing it with. And everything that he experimented with turned out to be true, and all the information that he was given was true. So he developed the human design system. It's not a system. You don't have to believe anything. It's not if you don't believe it, it's still what it is, just like Reiki in that sense. You don't have to believe it for it to work for you. Human design is independent of our ego. Another thing that's very similar to Reiki and shows us only what will lead us back to our authentic self. So I'll tell you just a little bit about how I became interested in it. And
Yeah,
again,
yeah, that sounds great. Do
don't
you want to
worry
stop
if,
the, yeah, great.
yeah,
Yeah, I'd love to
and
know.
don't worry if that just kind of like, the important thing is to hear it once. And even though you don't feel like you really understood it, it starts that process within you of you be starting to release that part of you that is your not self and bringing you back to your authentic self. So an energetic process does start taking place. So how did I become interested in this? I was actually teaching a Reiki class, and it was probably 2017 or 2018. I actually looked on the ICRT website back at all my students to find this student's name, and I can't find her name anywhere. It's the strangest thing. Her name's Bonnie, but I can't find any Bonnies in my student list. So it was either 2017 or 2018. And this girl Bonnie was talking about human design at lunch. I was still teaching in person at that time. So we were all sitting around the lunch table, and she downloaded my chart for me. And that was the first time that I viewed my body graph, which the body graph is a map or kind of like a user guide that shows you how you are genetically designed to engage with the world. And, we all have this unique inner guidance system, and it shows us how it works. So understanding, so she told me you're a projector, and she told me what my strategy was. So I'm a projector. And what that means for me basically is that the way I engage in decision making and engage in life, and this is for major things, like if I'm going to take a new job or move someplace or something big, start a new relationship. The way that I go into these decisions is to wait to be recognized. So for a projector, this is my strategy. Wait to be recognized and invited. So I am not a person that should be putting myself out there without being invited to do so. So having just that information gave me such insight into so many experiences that I had in the past that I had that did not turn out the way that I would have wanted them to. So one of them was a race that I used to organize every year. It was a 5K race, and I thought this up on my own. I thought, oh, I'm gonna start this race and donate all the money to the hospital. And I did it for 9 years. And the people that came to the race really enjoyed it. But the place that I was donating it to, I donated it to the volunteer department, and they appreciated it. But the administrative level of the hospital never like recognized that I did this. And it made me like upset. And I felt bad about that because it was never recognized. And I donated a lot of money to the hospital. So this was the first thing I thought of when I learned about my strategy about being a projector, to wait to be recognized and then invited to do something. I was certainly not recognized, and I definitely wasn't invited. I was looking back at my life, and I saw so many things that I imposed, well, not imposed, but I did not wait for recognition and to be invited. And I saw that the way they turned out. And then, of course, I did have a lot of experiences where I was invited into things, and I could see the huge difference that it made in the outcome of my experiences. So right away, my experience with human design was pretty profound. So I've taken multiple courses through Human Design America. I just finished the second semester of a 3-semester level 1 professional training. More importantly than that, I've been doing my best to live my design, to follow my strategy, which is wait for the invitation, and my authority, which I have emotional authority, which means I wait for an invitation. If I receive one, then I wait until I don't want to make a decision when I'm really feeling like excited about it or feeling like really low about it. So wait for the emotional wave and make the decision when I'm feeling more even about it. So
Well,
that
Tracy, I'm just a second. I'm really happy to know that because I've got some things that I'm going to invite you to do.
oh, see, this is the thing. You invited me to do this. This is perfect example, Karen. You invited me to do this, and as I speak this, then I'm doing it. I'm doing something in my correctly. And you know this now. Like I would have never called you and said, Karen, I need to be invited to things. So could you do that for me? So yeah, well, thank you. So it's kind of like a hard way to like learn how to be. And I found human design at kind of later in my life. And I've been living in a certain way for a very long time. So the thing that has really helped me to be able to like experiment with this and live my design is Reiki. I don't know that I would have been able to make this change in my life because it's hard to wait for an invitation. But what I'm finding is that when you do so, the invitation always comes. It's turning out to be true. I have been doing it for long enough now that I can verify. I'm not, perfect at it, but I've been doing it long enough in enough circumstances where I can say that, yes, this has actually worked for me.
Well,
So did that make sense?
mhm. Help us to know a little bit more about how it helps with your own self-discovery and healing.
So, well, for me, and when I talk about human design, I think it's important to come from my own perspective because we all have like that body graph I talked about. That is our energy, and that's how we're engaging in the world. So we're all going to come from a different place. So when I talk about human design, I do my best to talk about it from my own experience. So you're going to hear me say, for me, or in my experience, or my opinion, or whatever, because we are all individuals, and that is what human design is really profoundly trying to homogenize people and bring people to their authentic self. And that's why I love this connection so much, because that's what Holy Fire Reiki is all about the authentic self. And so is human design. So for me, having some practical guidelines to follow and experiment with has made such a huge difference in my life. Since I found human design at a later time, I've had a lot of life experiences to reflect on, and I was able to, and I still am able to look back on some experience that I entered into incorrectly. For example, I'm a projector with emotional inner authority, which means before I take action, I need to be recognized and invited, right? So then I have to wait for emotional clarity. So I think back to my job. I took a job at GE Healthcare, and I was invited to this position, and I immediately went with I felt, oh, excitement about this job, and I took it. I took the job. I said yes. I didn't know about emotional authority. I didn't know that I shouldn't take this job while I was like feeling so excited. I thought that was a good sign. I'm feeling really good about this. So I actually took the job really quickly. And boy, oh boy, did I have a bad year. Anybody that was associate that knew me or knew me at that time. And Karen, I think you were still my mentor at that time. I don't know if you remember this, but when I started that job at GE, it was rough. I almost had to leave the program. And I think back on that, and I entered that job incorrectly. So this stuff doesn't apply to, like, if I see somebody start to walk into the street and a car is coming, I'm not going to like wait for to be invited and emotional clarity about that, stuff like that. Of course, you're going to stop the person from walking in the street. So these are major life decisions. So, and if this sounds difficult to anybody, it can be. It can be. And then and that's where Reiki always helps me. So
Let me
whenever I
clarify.
feel,
Let me
what was
clarify
that?
if I could. So, I mean,
Sure.
so I'm a counselor and a marriage and family therapist. So it kind of sounds like a personality assessment of how your energy moves in the world and how you can best serve the world, as well as your best way to make decisions in the world. But it's based on astrology and some complicated things that I don't really understand. Is that anywhere
Yeah,
close? I mean, I don't know.
it's
Maybe the rest of you are
kind of
following this
close.
better than I am, but I'm kind of like, uh,
It's
went
kind of
over my
close.
head.
So what I left out that maybe I should have included is that what happens at the moment of your birth is there, and hopefully this isn't going to make it even crazier. At the moment of your birth, there is an imprint that takes place in your being, and whatever's active in your body is the energy that you can rely on throughout your life. And I'm going to share my screen so you can actually see what I'm talking about. So this is hopefully you can see that good. This is my body graph. And see where these colors are, Karen?
Uh-huh.
So when I was born, there is this thing called a neutrino stream that is, and it's the life force energy. It's another name for life force energy. It's just flowing through everything. And this is a scientific fact. This is always taking place. This neutrino stream, most of it, 70% of it comes from the sun and other stars in our solar system, a certain percentage from the planets as well. So this neutrino stream is flowing through, and at the time of your birth, that imprints you. And that is what is active in your energy field. And it's a reflection of your DNA, because the hexagrams, this outer wheel, and your DNA are they're related to each other. So you have a reflection of your DNA there. And what is highlighted with that color is what is active energy within you that you can always rely on through your entire life. So for me, and that's what creates all this definition here, all the lines and the centers that are defined are because of this stream of energy that was coming through at the time of my birth, the exact time of my birth. Does that clarify it at all, Karen?
Well, let me just ask our listeners here, how many of you are kind of following along? Oh, good. Good. Maybe some of you know a little bit.
I'm definitely too. It's quite interesting.
Okay,
Oh,
good.
good.
How many of you are kind of lost? Okay, well, all right. Hey, Tracy, half of us are following along, or maybe
Good.
so.
That's good.
It's not hard. You can do the I Ching online, and where the planets are when you're born is a blueprint, and your DNA is a blueprint, and if they all overlap, it all makes sense.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I don't know much about astrology or the I
You
Ching,
don't,
so
and you don't have to know anything about astrology to participate in this, Karen. I mean,
uh-huh.
you really don't. You really don't. You don't need to know like any of that first part
Mhm,
that I talked about, but it's kind of hard to talk about this without giving some reference point about what it is.
mhm,
You know what I mean?
uh-huh.
Jackie,
Okay.
did you have a
Yeah.
question?
Yes, I was wondering if you could, you've talked about the projectors, which is wonderful because that's what I am. But the four types, if you can help us differentiate the different four types that you can be of,
Yeah.
manifest projectors and reflectors and generators.
So I'll be talking about that.
Oh,
I
okay.
believe so. I'm not going into too much depth. I have some questions that I'm answering, but in the class that I'm offering, I'll go into a lot of depth
Okay, great.
into the different types and strategies and authorities. So for a 1 hour, presentation,
Got it.
it is kind of hard to include
So,
everything, but I
excellent.
will cover that a little bit.
All right, that there's other things. Okay. Well, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Hmm.
So to finish your question, so I guess I would say that I'm on a journey of discovering my authentic self through the mechanics of human design. And remember, try to keep in mind that what we're looking at here is based on the actual DNA of who we are. This involves seeing those beliefs or ways of being that are what we call in human design the not self. In my experience, it's the equivalent to the culturally created self or the dormant self that we talk about in Holy Fire Reiki. So through this journey, Reiki is helping me heal the things that come up. And I would say actually that Reiki is showing me to helping me to see the part of me that is my not self in a more compassionate way. I I think the most important thing for me since learning human design, and listen, if you don't know anything about it and you get this from it, if you can also to get this from it, I see myself in a more compassionate way and I understand myself more. I understand my reactions. I understand the effect that I have on people sometimes. This is the information you can get from human design, and it helps you in your relationships, most importantly with yourself, but also with other people. It gives you such a deeper understanding of the world around you and the people that you deal with every day. So
So,
I think that answered the
yeah.
question.
So if somebody has, their chart or they want to get their chart and they want to, be able to understand more, 'cause like Jackie said that, she has hers, but she doesn't really understand it. And Lucy said the same thing. Do you do sessions with people to go over this, or can you tell us where to go for that?
Yeah, I have some links to where the 3 sites that I would recommend. And if you want to send that little PowerPoint out that I sent you, Karen, all the links are on there for the places that I would recommend that people go. But you don't have to like pay for a reading to get a whole lot of information about human design. And no, I'm doing readings like on a practice basis and for, friends and stuff like that. But I haven't completed my training yet. So I'm not doing I'm not professional readings, but I would be happy to recommend a place for people to go. And remember that you don't have to know this stuff in depth to be able to get a whole lot out of human design. There is just a few pieces of information that could help you get started that could really change your life.
Okay, well, good. All right. Well, So we don't need to have an in-depth understanding of it to be able to use it somewhat. We can,
Absolutely not.
and there's places we can go to get our chart for free, as I've been told.
Yes.
You know, you just
Yep.
put in your birth date and time and place, and then it
Mhm.
will give you at least some basic information. And then from there, you can either do more reading at some of the links that you're providing, or schedule a session with someone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So I don't know if I have time to like just kind of go over the types real quick.
Oh, okay, sure. Whatever you'd like to cover.
Jackie. Oh, okay. So there's in human design, there's 4 types. It's divided into by 4 auras, into four different auras, and it's for the types in human design. So each has a different strategy and a different authority for how they best function without resistance. So strategy is a logical surrender to our form, our body, based on our individual type, which I'm going to tell you what they are. It allows our vehicle to surrender to the flow of life. So these are the 4 types. There's manifestors. Manifestors, the strategy for a manifestor is to inform before they initiate. So an example would be if if you're married to somebody and you're a manifestor, if you just tell them, you inform them of what you're going to do, then you do it. So in my opinion, it's kind of like a easy strategy to have. Just remember to inform that you're doing something. So there's only 9% of the population are manifestors, like full manifestors. And a manifestor, what makes a person a manifestor is they have a direct connection from one of the motors, like one of the centers in the body, say the sacral center, to the throat, like a direct connection from a motor to the throat. So it's all about the energetic connections in the body. So if you have a direct connection to the throat, that's how we manifest. You're a manifestor. So generators and manifesting generators, some people think that they should be separate, but I go by Human Design America and what Ra Uru taught, and a manifesting generator falls underneath the category of a pure generator. So you have generators and manifesting generators. That's 70% of the population. So the strategy for generators is to wait to be asked so they can respond. So they are responding to life. So somebody asks, and a manifestor, what they do is they wait to see how they feel about what it is that is being asked of them. So we're not using our mind, remember, this isn't about the mind. It's about our authority, and our strategy for a generator is sacral, and it's their sacral. And a lot of times it comes as a sacral sound, like somebody will ask you, would you like to go to Canada with me? And for a generator, they would either feel an energy rising up within them that is yes, or they'll feel that energy rising up within them that is. So a lot of times generators are out of touch with that automatic feeling that comes through their instinctual, well, actually it's not even instincts, it's their body speaking to them. Because we use our mind so much, a lot of times they're out of touch with that sacral response. So that's 70% of the population. So projectors, what I am, is 20% of the population. So we wait to be recognized and invited, like I was talking about before. And then there's reflectors. Reflectors is only 1% of the population. And they're a unique bunch. So with manifestors, if you want to compare this to a soccer game, manifestors would be the forwards, generators would be not the backwards, but the
Quarterback.
The receivers.
Oh.
The projectors would be between the manifestors and the generators, midfielders. And the reflectors would be like the goalie because they go by different rules. So they're 1% of the population, and they wait through their lunar cycle before making a decision. So they wait a whole month. And I won't go into the mechanics of that because that'll be like really confusing. So I haven't met a reflector yet in my practice. I'm really looking forward to the day that I do. So the other thing that goes with strategy is authority, and authority is a tool for living and like making decisions. It's our inner personal authority. It's a source of inner guidance for making decisions as yourself, like your personal GPS, as opposed to the mind. So that mind is an outer authority. It's what the mind is for other people. Decision making for ourselves has nothing to do with the mind. Our outer authority is the realm of the mind. If we liberate it from the decision making for ourselves, we're able to use its gifts in service of others. So, and just one last thing I'd like to say about that is that Reiki amplifies the ability to follow your strategy and authority. For example, and I've given you some experiences that I've had in my own life. And I can tell you that I always fall back to my strategy and authority and Reiki. And it has really been a powerful force in my life. So any questions about that? I know there's probably, it's a lot of information.
Thank you. Yes, I did put the information, the links into the chat.
Okay.
Designamerica.com, jovianarchive.com, where you can get your chart, and ihdschool.com.
Yeah, so I would recommend like getting your free chart. Get your free chart. It'll tell you what your type, your strategy, and authority are. Learn more about your design and experiment with it. I send Reiki to my design all the time. I always have it nearby. There's writing all over it. It's a worn paper. I send Reiki to my design to help me to become my authentic self. And I do it when I'm doing distance Reiki too. That's what I use now when I'm doing distance Reiki. So get your free chart, learn more about your design and experiment with it. Go against what it's saying, what it's suggesting you should do, and see what the outcome is. Play with it. It's an experiment with it. And I really believe that you will have some really good outcomes with it. Get a reading. Most of the people that are doing professional readings I think they're charging like a couple $100. If you're guided to do that, it's a lot of valuable information. But go to one of the websites that Karen put in the chat so you get a reading from somebody that has been trained to do readings, because there is so much information, and to get like a really good professional reading can be really beneficial. And then take a class if you really feel guided. Like I just like with Reiki, how I found Reiki and I really immersed myself in it. The same thing has happened with human design. It just really resonated with me. And I started taking classes. I took the first class and the second and the third. And now, like I said, I'm in this professional level training. And the more training I take, the more I see that there's so much to know. And that is part of what I really love about it, because it is just this huge wealth of information. And the most important thing that I've gotten from it is, like I said before, I just feel so much more compassion for myself and for other people. Not that I wasn't compassionate before, but I just have a better understanding of like who I am. And that's been huge for me.
And not trying to be something that you aren't.
Exactly.
Kind of what I'm getting.
Exactly. We are not meant to be the same. We're not meant to, it's like our society is homogenized, and we are all different people and we respond in different ways. So the more we can learn about our own way of being, the better that our whole like world would be, right? Because it would just change everything.
Wonderful.
So
Well,
I
does
hope that
anyone,
it
let me just
wasn't
see if anyone has any questions before we end. Any questions? Yeah, Jackie.
Ra, what was his name?
Uru who.
Yeah.
Ulu. Okay.
Yeah.
Is
How do
there
you
any
spell
way?
that?
Yeah.
RAURUHU.
Okay. Thank you. Is there any way that we can have all of this information downloaded to us like it was for him? That would make it so much easier.
Wouldn't that be something? Do you know that he, for the rest of his life, he had those 8 days where this information was downloaded to him, and for the rest of his life, he was guided by this information. So he continued to build on this system until he died. And he died in, I can't remember the year, but he was only like 60. He was almost 63 when he died. He was a young man.
Yeah.
But yes, he was guided. He said he described it as this light within him that would be constantly guiding him in human design. And this stuff goes deep. It goes to like your nutrition, like not what you should eat, but what the environment should be that you eat in. So,
Wow.
in your environment, like what type of place not should, but would be best for you to live in. And that's like really going deep into it. And I think that I probably already went deep enough.
Wow.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Well,
Yeah, my real distinct pleasure.
well, thank you, Tracy. So I will see what I can do to incorporate the PDF that you shared into
Okay.
the email. I think what I would have to do is put it as a link on my website in order to be able to insert it in the newsletter and then send it out.
Oh,
So if you're,
well,
or unless you have a link to it.
well, no, I don't, but I just remembered that I had yours. Do you want me to show yours real quick, or
Oh, sure. Go for it.
Oh, okay. So this
Do
is
it real
Karen's
quick.
body graph. And what I did is in human design, we call this like a superhero for human design. So I created like a paragraph that describes Karen's energy. So I love doing this with the teachers at the ICRT. I started with them and I've been doing it with them because my theory was that these individuals who have this really, really deep practice of Reiki is bringing them to their authentic self. My theory was that they were going to, when I wrote this about their energy, it was going to be like a direct reflection of who they are. And I was right about that. So this is Karen. This is when Karen was born, wherever the stars were and the planets were, and that when that stream of energy came down and imprinted her at that moment of her birth, this is what was active. This is what was activated in her being. So Karen is a generator with emotional authority. Karen is a generator because this is her sacral center, because that's defined. That is what makes her a generator. She has emotional authority because this is defined right here. This is the solar plexus. And when the solar plexus is defined, that means the person has emotional authority. And I'll just really quickly show you mine. If you can see it, see how my sacral is not defined. That is why I'm a projector, because my sacral is not defined. So everybody has a signature. So when Karen is living her design, she will feel satisfied in her life. So she's a generator with emotional authority. When she's living her design, she feels satisfied in her life. Her not self theme, when she is living in a way that is not following her design, she'll feel frustrated. So she's split definition. That means she has these two islands of definition. Like these two centers are connected to each other by this line right here. So these are both defined because this whole line here is defined. These four are defined because there's a line that is connecting them. But she split definition because she has these two islands of authority. So in Karen's life, somebody that has this definition defined in their body graph, or this are people that Karen is going to be attracted to, because when she's around those people and they have this definition, that's going to define her. So she'll have a definition all the way to the throat, and that will make Karen a manifesting generator. So she's always going to be looking for these people to complete these connections. So that's just a little about her definition. So all these lines that are totally defined here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. That's the energy within Karen. That is the energy that she can always rely on in her life. And they're called channels. They're defined and they're called channels. So she's got these 4 channels, and this is the I Ching, the I Ching, where the I Ching comes in. This channel, and Ra created the Rave I Ching. So it's an updated version of that, one of the first books ever written. So when you put 2 of those hexagrams, those numbers together, that's where the quantum comes in with this, and I won't get into that too much. So these are her channels, and this is just the keynote is what we call it. This keynote for this channel is organizational being. This one is struggle. The next one, mutation and intimacy. So the human in the hero's journey is just describing those channels that are defined, and they're not my words. I'm just taking the words from the I Ching. So in response and when emotionally clear, so she's a generator and she has emotional authority. So in response and when emotionally clear, you, Karen, bring mutation as a driving force that stands up against all odds while sustaining an intimate foundation for teaching others. So that is the energy that describes Karen. And in my experience with Karen, I feel like does that resonate with you, Karen?
If I understood it, it probably would. I'm sorry.
Well, I can tell you that when I read it,
I just
I was
hate to admit
amazed.
this, but I'm like going, this looks interesting, but I have a lot more that I could understand about it.
Well, you don't have to understand it. That is the beautiful thing about this. This is a lot more information than you have to understand. So one other thing that, I don't usually bring up, but I did because of what yours is, the left angle cross of upheaval. So this is kind of what guides you through your life, like a energy, the essence of who you are. Challenge what isn't working. And the other thing that goes along with this, and I was like, wow, when I read this, therapists that know that therapy has to be practical to work. So I don't know if that's something that you believe, but
Well, absolutely. Yes. Well,
So
that part makes sense.
So that is your incarnation cross, and your incarnation cross is an overview of who you are and who you're meant to be in this lifetime. And I don't know, to me, the whole thing described you so well, because I just feel like you're very powerful and are able to like get things like done.
Get things done. Okay.
very-
Not get things as an understand. I'm sorry, I feel like I feel like a slow learner today, but that's okay, because if there's members of the listening audience that are also slow, then you won't feel bad because I'm
It has nothing to do with being It doesn't have anything to do with being slow. It's new information.
Yeah.
And when you hear new information, especially something like this, it's like not like ordinary information that you're hearing every day. And again, and the other thing is it's coming through me. So I'm speaking of it through my filters. So, if you heard it from somebody else, it might just make perfect sense. And that's like the beauty of all of this to me. Part of the beauty of it is that we're all filters for like whatever kind of energy that is flowing through us. So we can never expect to hear something in the same way from any two people.
Well, Tracy, we need to end, but I so appreciate you giving us a great overview and introduction to the system, and and it's perfect. And Tracy is what is it? You're a neuro.
Oh, I'm a nuclear medicine technologist.
So yeah, so the nuclear medicine technologist gets this. The therapist, not so much, but you know what? I bet it's going to make more sense the next time I hear about it. And it's interesting and intriguing. And so now we have resources where we can go explore it some more on our own, or also with that 4-hour class, because I'd like to
it's
learn
actually
more about it.
It's a 7-hour class, Karen. It turned into a 7-hour class. So
Oh, okay.
yeah, it's a lot of information. And then one other thing, if anybody, when I start doing practice readings, I'd be happy to do one with anybody if they're interested, for free.
Well, that's quite an offer.
All
All right. So Tracy's website is reikiintegration.com. Did I get that right?
Yes, you did.
Yes, reikiintegration.com. Awesome. So, well, thank you all so much for joining us. And, the inspiration for this came about just because I was thinking, oh, it'd be nice to hear more about human design. And then I was talking to Tracy, and she said that she'd been studying human design. I said, wow, hey, how about you come on my podcast? So, yeah, Shannon, did you have a suggestion or a question? Oh, yeah. Okay, good. So yes, if you have other topics that you want to hear about, just send me an email. My website is karenharrison.net, and I love to talk about what you would be interested in, long as it relates some way back to Reiki. So thank you all. And thank you so much, Tracy. And thank you to everybody for joining us.
Thank you for your attention, everybody.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us live. And thank you to all the people who will listen to this.